And Anna Throne-Holst from the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce in New York. A big hand for Anna. So Anna is, of course, then one of the co-hosts of this event. And sorry, I didn't mention all the nice co-hosts we have here. I forgot in the insane minutes of the morning. But SACCNY New York, Swedish American Chamber of Commerce in New York, is one of our co-hosts, alongside with wonderful, wonderful, fantastic Axe Foundation, the wonderful, fantastic Coop, the wonderful, fantastic Ericsson. Did I forget? Yeah, I forgot the City of Stockholm, of course. So all those co-hosts, a big hand for them. Okay, thank you very much. Now, sorry for me being so confused, but let's stop being confused and let's get into the real stuff. So Anna, what is SACCNY New York?
SACCNY New York, as you said, is the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce in New York. And we are the oldest Swedish chamber outside of Sweden and the first foreign chamber in the United States. Little known fact to a lot of Swedes, but Swedish government was actually the first government to recognize the independent United States of America many years ago. So it's a long-standing relationship, and we've been there for 112 years. And then some people say to me, why do you do a Foodtech conference? Chambers of commerce don't generally do things like that. But we look at it as this is technology, this is the way of the future, and this is really commerce and business in the future, and we have an important role to play there. So we, for 10 years now, have run a conference. It used to be called Farm to Fork. I've been at the chamber at its helm for just about a year, and one of the things I reacted to was, in my previous life as a politician, we had a big land conservation organization out where I was in office, and our fundraiser for that land conservation was a Farm to Fork. And if you Google Farm to Fork, you will find that there are probably about 35 conferences a year called Farm to Fork. And most people confuse that with gastronomy and just food. In our case, we were interested in bringing forward Swedish tech companies that are focused on how do you resolve the many vexing questions around food production, transportation, packaging, waste, et cetera, et cetera. And so we renamed this, and we thought we were really clever. We married the word sustainability with all the ologies, technology, biology, whatever. So we are now the Sustainology Summit. And I don't know if you remember how we met last year.
Almedalen.
Almedalen.
Yes.
I was standing in your tent, and I was eating some alternative form of ice cream with cricket sprinkles on it. It was delicious.
Forbidden in Sweden. You can't say that.
Well, I brought them with me. Whatever.
You catch them.
And you came up to me and said, do you think that's good? I said, yeah, I think it's delicious. Blah, blah, blah. We started talking, and then you came over and were a big part of our conference last year. And we do it in New York in November. This year it's November 13th, and we do it together with at Citibank, with Deloitte, and several other sponsors. Axel Jonsson is one of our big sponsors as well. And we bring forward cutting-edge Swedish tech companies that are there to really disrupt food and everything around food production. And we then get Swedish tech companies to pitch to us, and today, later on, you will see the 4 finalists for that come up here and do their presentations. And then we will announce the winner at our summit in New York on November 13th. You're all invited to come. It's a really great event. We get fantastic speakers, and this year we're focusing on the SDG goal number 17, which is to create cross-border partnerships to help problem solve. And so we are working with City of New York, working with the City of Stockholm, and starting that conversation on how do we create common goals, how do we create common problem solving. And despite what you might think about the United States of America today, it is not only Washington, D.C. or a big White House. It is lots of good states, and New York being one of them, which is very much at the forefront of all of these sustainability issues and looking for these sorts of partnerships. So it's actually really exciting. You're all invited to come. I have this information. I don't think our tech guy got this in time for over here, but I've got some information for anyone, and we're looking forward to having you back.
Yeah, I will come back, absolutely. And I think this is really interesting. This is one of the effects of those types of relationships between the US and Sweden, is that we actually named then the first half of this day Sustainology, in order to showcase a lot of sustainable initiatives from all over the world that can be implemented in Stockholm and in New York. And our ambition is to feed the US with Swedish companies and Sweden with the US companies wanting to come here, of course. So so without further ado, let's get them on stage, right?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And we have the first speaker, Shir Friedman from SuperMeat in Israel. Scheer, welcome. Scheer, pleasure having you here, Scheer.
Thank you.
The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Shir Friedman. I've been a vegan for the past 13 years, and I also recently co-founded a meat company called SuperMeat. You might not think that these two are supposed to go together, and that is due to the fact that meat is usually associated with animal slaughter. But what if we could decouple meat from the slaughtering of animals and raise meat in a way that will not require us to grow a single animal for it? That is what SuperMeat is doing, but before we'll get to how we do it, let's get to why. So people love meat all over the world. If we put the ethical and ecological debates aside for a moment and concentrate on meat as a product, you'll see that meat is a great product. That is because no matter where you go, meat is eaten and eaten a lot. We consume a lot of meat. By the end of 2018, 300 billion kilograms of meat will be consumed this year. The most consumed animal is pork. The favorite meat to eat is pork. And the poultry sector is the fastest growing meat sector. And meat is here to stay. By the year 2050, experts predict that we will double our meat intake, double what it was in the year 2000. So with that being said, let me show you the high-end, high-tech, cutting-edge technologies that we use to produce us with $1 trillion worth of meat every year. This is it. This is our most amazing technology of meat production today. To produce us meat, we have to grow and kill animals. The problem with that solution, putting the ethical discussion aside, is that these animals were not evolved to be efficient meat-creating machines. They were evolved for their own needs and survival. And while we'll try to bypass that with selective breedings and other methods, the fact of the matter remains the same. Animals are not efficient meat-creating machines. For example, if you want to talk about their energy conversion, to get 1 calorie from meat, we have to invest between 10 to 30 calories from plants. So that's a 10% conversion at best. The protein conversion is a little better, and still at best, it's 20% for poultry. And if you want to talk about water use, the numbers there are even more alarming. To get 1 kilogram from poultry, we have to invest 4,000 liters of water. And for beef, 15,000 liters of water. 1 hamburger from beef is the equivalent of 2 months' worth of showering. So what are our alternatives today? There are 2 main ones that we've already discussed in the short time prior to my lecture. One of them is plant-based protein. Now, as a vegan for 13 years, I can testify that there are amazing plant-based alternatives out there that are both tasty and healthy. The other one is insect-based protein, and that is a sector that is actually growing and getting more and more hype every day. Now, these two have their pros and cons, and you might be thinking, having your own opinion of them. But the fact of the matter remains that, statistically speaking, meat is definitely here to stay. So what if, instead of debating on changing the product from meat to plants or insects, we will think of a way to create the same product, but in a different production method. That is what we're doing in SuperMeat. SuperMeat is a clean meat startup that is creating meat from chicken cells through methods of bioengineering. It starts with an initial chicken. At SuperMeat, we went out and we found the healthiest, best chicken that will provide us with the tastiest kind of meat. And once we had that chicken, we took one single biopsy from that chicken that contained special types of cells that could grow indefinitely. That way, we never have to go back to the chicken again. And that chicken will get to live and see itself feeding the entire human population. So now we have the cells, but we need mass, because we want to create meat, enough meat to feed an enormous amount of people. So these cells are taken into special types of incubators that look somewhat like this. These incubators, as a matter of fact, are the future of factory farming. Inside of these incubators are special conditions that mimic the physiological conditions of the chicken. But we still need the mass. Now, the beautiful thing about cell culture is that things happen quickly. Imagine having a farm of 1,000 chickens one day and going back to that farm the other day to find 2,000 chickens. That is cell culture. So once we reach a mass of cells, we still don't have meat on our hands. We need to convince these cells to switch and give us the tissues, a special type of tissues that are the meat tissues that we want to eat. That happens with changing the special diet that the cells get to trigger them to do so. And once that is done, we harvest the meat that we created, and we are free to do whatever we want with it. So that is clean meat in a nutshell. And one chicken, just one chicken, could potentially feed the entire world with meat and live to see it happen. So what makes clean meat a better solution than current meat production? Well, as I mentioned before, animals are not very efficient meat-making machines. And if we want to talk about how much water is needed to create us meat all around the world, to create meat, we need 1/3 of all fresh water sources all around the world, 1/3 of fresh water. And with clean meat will require 90% less of that. Excuse me? The clicker doesn't work for some reason. Okay. So clean meat will require 90% less of the water that is needed to produce regular meat. Let's talk about global warming. Currently, the world's largest contributor to global warming is the meat industry due to carbon emissions. And clean meat will emit 80% less greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, which will alleviate global warming dramatically. If we want to talk about land use, which might not sound like a big issue, but to grow roughly 20 billion animals at every given point in time, we need place for these animals to live, and we need place to grow these animals' food. We need so much land to grow meat that to create meat all around the world, roughly 1/2 of our planet's land is occupied to create meat, 1/2 of our planet's land. And clean meat will require 99% less of that. So those are the ecological benefits. Those are the ecological benefits of clean meat. We need to go back. Let's talk about the health benefits that clean meat will have. Let's start with antibiotic resistancy. To raise animals, we need to provide them with a lot of antibiotics to prevent them from getting sick. So much antibiotics is used that in the United States, 80% of all antibiotics are fed to livestock. And with so many antibiotics in our ecosystem, that gives rise to antibiotic-resistant bacteria. It is estimated that by the year 2050, more people will die of antibiotic resistancy than people will die of cancer. And clean meat will not require any use of antibiotics at all. Another positive outcome for public health is that clean meat will not contain any E. coli or salmonella. These two are present in meat because of the unfortunate situation that birds defecate on themselves during slaughter. That is something that is almost unpreventable. But clean meat will not contain these fecal matter. And last but not least, when you grow animals in mass and in crowdedness, you create a fertile ground for pandemics. Infamous pandemics like bird flu and swine flu originated in the meat industry. And if we don't need to raise animals anymore for food, then we alleviate that potential for the next pandemic to occur. Clean meat will also have a positive impact on the animals. Whether you like your meat or you're a hardcore vegan, nobody likes the thought of killing animals for food. And with clean meat, not a single animal has to be slaughtered to provide the world with meat. So those are all the benefits that clean meat will have, but it will also have some cool implications on our future. For example, we could control the quality of the meat since we are creating it. We could design the meat to create more of the good nutrients and less of the bad ones. We could grow meat in places that you never thought of, like outer space. The fact that the meat will not contain any bacteria will prolong its shelf life and will make it possible to ship more of it to more distant places, saving time, money, and waste. Meat will also become accessible to areas where raising animals is impossible due to climate. But how will it implicate the farmers that are currently working in the meat industry? Well, to create clean meat, we still need these farmers, since the feed that we give to ourselves originated from plants, and somebody needs to grow these plants. On top of that, clean meat facilities that are factories of clean meat will also need some manpower. So the farmers will definitely keep their jobs. They will just become farmers of clean meat. So those are all the implications that clean meat will have on our future, but will the public be willing to accept it? We know that a lot of people are concerned about genetic engineering, which clean meat will not have, and about frankenfoods and so on. So let me tell you a little story first. Before the invention of refrigerators, to get ice, we would go out to frozen lakes and harvest our ice from there. When refrigerators were invented, people were afraid to try refrigerated ice. They called it fake and unnatural, which I guess you can say it is kind of unnatural to grow ice in a refrigerator. They called it artificial. They were really scared of it. And yet here we are today, consuming fake ice from scary refrigerators with not a care in the world. So every new technology is might be a little off-putting at first, but that is the nature of human evolution. New technologies rise, and we get used to them. And clean meat makes so much sense that it is bound to happen. But that is not just me talking. There were many sociological studies done on this issue. A recent one done in the States showed that when presented with the question of will you be willing to try clean meat, only 30% refused. And when asked, will you be willing to ship your diet from farmed meat to clean meat, again, only 30% refused, which is a very good starting point. When people were presented with the positive outcomes of clean meat, like I gave you today, the number of refusals dropped even more. So the public will probably accept meat with open arms. But what about a different type of acceptance? The regulatory authorities. Will clean meat be considered meat? Will it be regulated just like any other type of meat on the market today? Well, in a recent report done in the US, for many different regulatory authorities, including the USDA and the FDA, it claimed that meat will be able to be regulated under existing regulatory regimes. And in a recent quote from the FDA, it was mentioned that clean meat will be safe to consume. So clean meat will definitely be the next step in human evolution. Thank you.